Okay, so we're here with Kazuha, and I think this is called the Valley of Remembrance. No, that might be the one for the veneer set. However, this is the one where you're basically just getting the energy recharge set. However, so basically, what I want to talk about is the kind of co-op experience that we're getting right now, because it's not the best, if I'm being honest, because it's basically non-existent in the sense of we are just kind of not existing doing nothing, but basically doing nothing. All we Once you're far enough in the game, you don't really need anyone to help you do domains and stuff. Like I remember early on, me and one of my really good friends would just kind of like go through it really fast, and like because we needed each other there. However, like once you get farther along in the game, it's just not really necessary. And then like other than that, you can't really like loot or anything, so like exploring's kind of boring. So like I think MiHoYo needs to kind of amp up what they're doing for co-op because I feel like that'd be another good way to kind of like involve a lot of other parties in and interest people in playing the game more, especially older players. But it's interesting because I don't really know how you go about it without getting kind of PvP like, because like of course you can have players go against each other, but it's not really the best option because it gets really toxic, and not a lot of people want it because it gets toxic. But at the same time, you have to think about some way to get players involved with each other. Like I know that, for example, Honkai Impact has a kind of like scoreboard for like different runs of like say like the something similar they have to the Spiral Abyss, and that's an interesting way of doing things. However, it's still not the best in terms of like getting people involved. My other thought was kind of like just in order to get. My other thought was Genshin's not really a game that's meant to be played multiplayer, and it kind of sounds odd and a little bit pessimistic, but like it seems like every attempt they have at having kind of a multiplayer experience feels like a different game. Like say you have something like Mario Kart that's like meant to be played multiplayer, and like they integrate something like racing or like mini games into Genshin Impact, and of course they work better with multiplayer, but I feel like a different game being shoved into Genshin, and that's not. I want to say the best way to go about it. It might be like an okay way, but at the same time, it's just. I feel like it just defeats the purpose, and just especially with all of these events being so temporary, it just kind of feels useless. If I'm if I'm being honest, but again, not disrespecting any of the efforts that they're making because like it is. I'm even having trouble kind of like trying to decide and integrate ways of kind of having multiplayer stuff, but yeah, I just wanted to know like what would be some like great ways to involve more of a like multiplayer culture in a game that I feel like is so kind of like solo, such as like Genshin Impact, where you can clear all the content by yourself, and there's not really a lot of activities to do with other people. Do you make the game harder again, so you have to have multiplayer? Because that's another option, and that's what people kind of wanted a little while ago is to increase the difficulty of Genshin again to make it so that have that feeling again where they can't do things. Because like as it stands now, I'm not afraid of any of the content in the game. I can literally clear it in a good few minutes. Literally, my biggest fear is just being inconvenienced, say by the new like Sneaky Boy in the Chasm. He's not hard. He just moves around a lot, so it takes a little while to kill him. Mainly because he just moves around so a lot, so you can't hit him as often. So like new boss mechanics that are more like annoying than hard is what I feel like Genshin's trying to do in terms of like amping up the difficulty, but like that's not how I think you should approach making things more difficult. In fact, it's really neat to see like really cool mechanics, such as like one is really not coming to mind at the moment. I guess like most of the boss fights in Final Fantasy VII the remake are actually really nicely done, and you can consistently hit the bosses. And there are only a couple of times where like there's like immunities. However, you can just kind of blow through them as fast as possible, and it's not really an issue. And like they're hard in the sense of I feel like I'm going to die, and they do a lot of damage, and maybe I will die a couple of times. But that's the kind of challenge of it all, and what makes things more interesting than not. And so like Genshin lacking that kind of like death as an death as an option is just really, again, for lack of better words, boring. Like I feel like whenever we get a boss fight, like we've had all of the new harbingers dropped, and I can guarantee you that I'm not going to be able to clear any of them. Like they may be like more annoying to fight and may take me a little longer to do, but none of the bosses are going to truly be hard. And I don't think that's going to be the case for any of the new players. Because once you get there, you are firmly established in the game, and you have your characters that do a lot of damage, and you have your supports that heal or shield you. And so, like, you won't run into that problem anymore. And, like, another issue that a couple of content creators have, like, spoken on is the fact that also, like, new players are also just screwed over in the game. And this is because all the new characters that you get, one of the like main things that people are playing Genshin for are the new characters, and they're kind of being locked out of these new characters and playing them because they don't have access to the materials they need to level them up, which is like really dumb to me. Like I get that MiHoYo wants to specialize different characters, different regions, and it makes sense because like if a character comes from a region, their material should be from that region too. But I would love if they had a system that would make it more kind of, if you are in the first region, that you can exchange things in like a shop to get the materials that you need in order to upgrade those characters, so you can still play those characters in like the first chapter of the game that show up way later in the game. Like say you got Raiden and you're still in Mondstadt, you're not going to be able to upgrade her until you get to Inazuma, which is really dumb. That's a lot of material that you need to go through in order to get to Inazuma. And a lot of that kind of material they have to go through, you can't even get through in a timely manner because you need to grind a lot in order to get there. And so I just feel like MiHoYo just needs to kind of evaluate how to fix that issue and make it so players are not kind of just locked out of using new characters, because it goes against what I feel like their goal is, and that's to make people excited for new characters and just let them play them. Because if you don't let people play new characters, then what is the point of having new characters? I guess the kind of older characters, or not older characters, older players, people who have been around since launch, will not see an issue in it because they can just get the materials because they're already there in the story. However, like newer players, who we still have a lot of newer players, are not going to have that kind of same luxury. And so I feel like MiHoYo just needs to set up some way in order to make it so that they have access to these materials and access to these boss fights. That I get that MiHoYo doesn't want people to run into boss fights that they haven't really had exposure to yet because it might spoil something. However, at the same time, I think it should be up to the player whether they want that to be spoiled for them or not. Like, say you'd like go against like a Raiden boss fight, and you're just like, why am I fighting Raiden? Like, isn't she like a good guy? And it's like, yes. However, at the same time, again, I think it should be up to the player they whether they decide to, for lack of, whether they decide to kind of spoil that for themselves. Because, like, again, I want everyone to be as happy as possible and to have as much fun with Genshin as possible because it is a really good game. And, like, I don't want anyone to be excluded from having fun and from having experiencing characters and how like really cool they are. And if that needs to happen, whether it happens to be spoiling a bit, then like again, up to the player, not MiHoYo. And I feel like that's where a lot of the issues are coming from. But that might just be me, and I haven't thought it out too much, so it may just be kind of like a little premature. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts?